Margaret Collins had always believed that family meant permanence. At 72, widowed and fragile but fiercely independent, she had sold her small house in Ohio to move in with her daughter Emily and son-in-law Daniel Parker in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston. Daniel had insisted it was temporary. Just until we figure things out, he had said with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. At first, everything seemed cordial. Margaret kept mostly to herself, spending her mornings reading by the window and her afternoons tending the small garden in the backyard. She cooked occasionally, cleaned up after herself, and tried not to intrude. She knew she was a guest in someone else's home, even if that someone else was her own child. But Daniel's patience wore thin quickly. He didn't like the smell of her herbal teas. He didn't like her television programs. He didn't like that she moved slowly through the kitchen in the mornings. Most of all, he didn't like that she occupied the largest guest bedroom, the one with the best light. Then Daniel's mother, Patricia Parker, announced she would be visiting for a few weeks. Those few weeks turned into an indefinite stay before she even arrived. Patricia was everything Margaret was not: loud, opinionated, critical, and unapologetically territorial. Within days, she had taken over the living room, the kitchen, and eventually Daniel himself. "This house doesn't feel like my son's home," Patricia complained one evening. "It feels like a retirement center." Margaret heard every word from the hallway. Emily tried to mediate, but Daniel had already made up his mind. The confrontation came on a cold Tuesday morning. Margaret was folding laundry in her room when Daniel knocked once, not waiting for an answer, and stepped inside. "We need to talk," he said flatly. Margaret set the towels aside. "Of course. My mother will be staying here. Permanently." Margaret nodded slowly. "I understand. And she needs this room." For a moment, Margaret thought she had misheard him. "I'm sorry." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You'll have to move out." The words landed like a physical blow. I don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. "That's not my problem." Emily appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. "Daniel, please." But Daniel had already opened the closet. He began pulling out Margaret's clothes, and not gently, not respectfully, tossing them onto the bed, then into an open suitcase, then onto the floor when the suitcase filled. Her framed photographs followed. Her medication organizer. Her late husband's watch. Each item hit the carpet with a dull, humiliating thud. "Stop!" Emily cried. Margaret didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply stood there, hands trembling, as the life she had carefully reduced to a few possessions was dismantled in minutes. When Daniel dragged the suitcase to the front door and set it outside, the cold air rushed in like a final verdict. "You can call a taxi," he said. "Or a shelter." Margaret looked at her daughter one last time. Emily's face crumpled with helpless grief. Without another word, Margaret picked up the suitcase, stepped into the freezing morning, and walked down the driveway. The door closed behind her. Inside the house, Patricia Parker smiled faintly. Daniel believed he had solved a problem. He had no idea he had just set in motion the worst mistake of his life. At first, the house felt bigger, quieter, orderly. Patricia redecorated Margaret's former room immediately, new curtains, new bedding, new furniture delivered within days. Any trace of the old woman disappeared as if she had never existed. Daniel told himself this was better. Cleaner. Normal. But Emily changed. She stopped playing music while cooking. stopped laughing at television shows, stopped reaching for his hand at night. Conversations became logistical and brief. Dinners in the oven. I'm going to bed early. I'll be late tomorrow. Meanwhile, Patricia's presence filled every corner of the home. She criticized Emily's cooking, rearranged the kitchen without asking, and complained constantly about noise, temperature, and neighbors. Nothing was ever right. Then Daniel's troubles at work began. A major client pulled out of a contract. Rumors of layoffs spread through the office. His performance reviews turned sharply critical. Sleep became elusive. And in the quiet hours of the night, Daniel found himself thinking about the morning Margaret had left, the way she hadn't argued, hadn't begged, hadn't even looked angry. Just defeated. He pushed the thought away every time. Until the phone rang one evening. Is this Daniel Parker? Yes. This is St. Vincent Medical Center. We have a Margaret Collins listed as your emergency contact. His stomach dropped. She was brought in earlier today. Hypothermia. Dehydration. Severe exhaustion. For several seconds, Daniel couldn't speak. Emily grabbed the phone from him, her face draining of color as she listened. They drove to the hospital in silence. Margaret looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, skin pale, hair disheveled, oxygen tubing looped around her ears. She seemed older than 72. She seemed ancient. Emily broke down immediately, clutching her mother's hand. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, unable to move closer. A nurse approached him with a clipboard. We found this among her belongings. It was a worn envelope, edges soft from years of handling. Inside were documents. Legal documents. And what Daniel read there made his vision blur. The house. Their house. It had been purchased largely with funds from Margaret Collins. Proceeds from the sale of her lifelong home. Her retirement savings. An inheritance from her late husband. Transferred quietly to Emily, with one condition written in careful legal language. Lifetime right of residence for Margaret Collins. She had never mentioned it. Never used it as leverage. Never even reminded them. Daniel felt physically ill. He had thrown the legal owner of the home into the street. Margaret regained consciousness 2 days later. Daniel was there. He hadn't left the hospital except to shower and change clothes. When her eyes opened and found him, confusion flickered across her face. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. For everything. She studied him for a long time before speaking. You were protecting your home, she said gently. The kindness hurt more than anger ever could. No, Daniel whispered. I destroyed it. Emily made a decision that day. Worse, he had done it knowing she had nowhere to go. Emily looked at him with something colder than anger. You didn't just throw out my mother, she said quietly. You threw away the person who made this life possible. For the first time, Daniel understood that regret wasn't a feeling. It was a weight. And it had just begun to crush him. Patricia Parker moved into a hotel. Permanently. Margaret returned to the house weeks later, not as a guest, not as an obligation, but as family. Daniel carried her suitcase inside himself. Every morning after that, he made her tea exactly the way she liked it, honey, not sugar. Not because he thought it would erase what he had done. But because regret, he had learned, doesn't disappear. It becomes part of who you are. And sometimes, the only redemption available is to spend the rest of your life trying to deserve forgiveness you may never fully receive. Margaret's return to the house did not restore normalcy. If anything, it exposed just how much had been broken. Daniel had imagined a moment of quiet forgiveness, a gradual easing back into routine, mornings with polite conversation, evenings with television, the past dissolving into something distant and manageable. Instead, the house felt like a place where everyone walked carefully, as if loud noises might shatter something invisible. Margaret moved slowly, her steps cautious, her posture slightly bent from the weeks of physical strain. She spent most of her time in the sunroom now, wrapped in a light blanket even when the temperature was comfortable. A book rested in her lap, though Daniel often noticed she wasn't turning pages. Emily hovered constantly, adjusting pillows, bringing tea, asking if she needed anything every few minutes. Margaret always smiled and said, "I'm fine, sweetheart." Daniel did not hover. He didn't know how. He woke earlier than everyone else now, moving quietly through the kitchen, preparing breakfast that no one had asked for. Toast arranged neatly on plates. Eggs cooked carefully. Coffee brewed exactly the way Margaret used to make it. Sometimes she ate a little. Sometimes she only thanked him and left the plate untouched. Every untouched plate felt like a verdict. Emily slept in the guest room. At first Daniel assumed it was temporary, that she needed space after everything that had happened. But days turned into weeks, and the distance between them became routine rather than reaction. Conversations were polite, measured, stripped of warmth. "Did you pay the electricity bill?" "Yes." "Mom has a doctor's appointment Thursday. I'll take the day off." No arguments. No affection. No partnership. One night Daniel stood outside the guest room door for several minutes, hand raised to knock, then lowered it again and walked away. He told himself she needed time. What he didn't admit was that he was afraid she might say she didn't need him anymore at all. Margaret's doctor recommended light activity, short walks, fresh air, gentle movement. So Daniel offered to drive her to the nearby park. The offer surprised both Margaret and Emily. Margaret hesitated only a moment before agreeing. The drive was quiet. Not uncomfortable, exactly, just unfamiliar. Daniel realized with a jolt that he had never been alone with her like this before. There had always been Emily, or noise, or distraction. Now there was only the hum of the engine and the soft rustle of Margaret's coat. At the park, Daniel walked beside her slowly, matching her pace. Leaves skittered across the path in the cool autumn wind. After several minutes, Margaret spoke. "You don't have to feel obligated to do this." "I'm not," Daniel said quickly. Then, more honestly, "I want to." She studied him, her expression thoughtful rather than skeptical. "Why?" The question caught him off guard. "Because I'm sorry. Because I feel guilty. Because I don't know how to fix what I broke." Instead he said, "Because you matter." Margaret looked away, blinking rapidly. For a moment Daniel thought she might cry, but she didn't. "I always hoped you would come to see that," she said quietly. Daniel's professional life continued to unravel. The layoffs he had feared became reality, though not in the way he expected. He wasn't fired, but he was demoted. Responsibilities reduced. Authority stripped away. Salary cut. The official explanation cited strategic restructuring. The unofficial reality was simpler. His performance had slipped badly during the months of stress, and the company no longer trusted him with high-level accounts. Driving home that evening, Daniel felt a hollow ache that went deeper than anger. He had defined himself for years by his success, his competence, his ability to control outcomes. Now control felt like an illusion. When he walked into the house, Margaret was in the kitchen, something she rarely attempted now. She was making soup. The familiar scent filled the air, warm and comforting, stirring memories Daniel didn't realize he had formed. Winter evenings, quiet bowls placed on the table without ceremony, nourishment offered without expectation of praise. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Margaret smiled. "I wanted to." They ate together at the table, just the two of them, while Emily worked late. For the first time since her return, the silence felt peaceful rather than strained. Recovery did not come as a single turning point. It came in small, almost invisible shifts. Margaret began spending more time outside the sunroom. Emily started sleeping in the bedroom again, not touching Daniel, but present. Daniel learned when to speak and when to simply sit nearby. Forgiveness, he realized, was not a moment. It was a process measured in ordinary days. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Margaret called him into the living room. "I've been thinking," she said, "about the future." Daniel felt a spike of anxiety. The future had become a frightening concept, something fragile, uncertain, easily lost. "I don't want to be a burden," she continued. "Not now, not later." "You're not," he said immediately. She held up a hand, smiling gently. "Let me finish." She explained that she had been speaking with a community center nearby, a place where seniors volunteered, took classes, and supported one another. They had offered her a position helping coordinate programs once she regained more strength. "I want a life that doesn't revolve around being taken care of," she said. "I want to contribute again." Daniel felt something unexpected, pride. Not pity. Not obligation. Respect. "I think that's a great idea," he said. Margaret reached out and squeezed his hand, a small gesture, but one that carried a quiet warmth he hadn't felt from her before. "Thank you," she said, "for listening." Months later, the house no longer felt haunted. Not perfect. Not restored to what it once was, because what it once was had contained cracks they had never noticed. Now it felt honest. Margaret left the house most mornings for the community center, returning with stories about people she'd met, projects she was helping organize, plans for upcoming events. Color returned to her cheeks. Laughter returned to her voice. Emily began smiling again, cautiously at first, then freely. And Daniel learned that redemption isn't earned through grand gestures. It's built through consistency. Through showing up. Through patience. Through accepting that some wounds leave scars that never fully disappear. One evening, as the three of them sat together watching an old movie, Margaret leaned back in her chair and sighed contentedly. "You know," she said, "this feels like home." Daniel glanced at Emily. Their eyes met, something unspoken passing between them, not complete healing, not yet, but the possibility of it. For the first time since that cold morning months ago, he believed that possibility might be enough. Because regret had not destroyed him. It had changed him. And sometimes, change is the only second chance life offers.